Welcome back to the Side Chat podcast. This week we are finally going to do the podcast we've been talking about for a while for World War II movies. We have Kobe Wob, we have a Firefly, and then we have a non-speaking Markin. So there's kind of a international panel, we'll call it. And there might be somebody else showing up later. It's undecided yet.
Maybe not.
Maybe, who knows. So I first figured that there's got to be over 1,000 World War II movies made at this point.
Easily.
If you go universally. Mm-hmm. Majority of them are made by Hollywood. Some are blockbusters, some are dramas, some are crap, and some of them are really good. And
or love stories.
Yeah. And when we initially came up with this list, when we initially came up with the list, it was filled up with actually about 4 of the 10 top 10 were actually not really war stories, but call them like humanity or cultural stories. So some of them were the pianist. You could throw Casablanca on there. You could throw Schindler's List in there, and so on. So we kind of threw those out, and those are all movies that people should see if they want to be actually cultured and intelligent. Like I think that's movies people should see before they're 18.
But if you want to watch it blow up,
that's the movies we're going to talk about. Yeah. We're going to start with the worst 10 first, or at least the worst of the worst, because a majority of these are American Hollywood movies. And I know, I guess we'll start with, it's got to be Kobe and I's most hated movie, Pearl Harbor. By Michael Bay.
So bad.
God. Quick story, though. I remember when I went and saw this in theaters when I was 12. And afterwards, my dad was really quiet for like 45 minutes in the car. We're driving back from the city. And he just looks over at me and he goes, "I just want you to know something, son. That's not how Pearl Harbor happened. Forget you saw that movie."
So bad.
Yep. I don't know. They
should have called it Ben and Josh's Bromance instead.
It was like was it The Bachelorette? Kate Beckinsale has to choose from the 2 handsome U.S. Air Force captains and
Bachelorette World War II edition.
And then they had there's so much randomness about the Battle of Britain scene made no sense.
No, not no sense at all. And the only thing that I actually like about this movie is the woman character. I'm not sure what her name is, but she's actually quite nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that.
That's the only reason to watch that movie is because of Kate Beckinsale. Seriously.
That's the only reason I watch any Kate Beckinsale movie.
Just Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah, and then the worst part about the entire fucking movie is you get towards the end, like you survive the whole Pearl Harbor bullshit, the Battle of Britain bullshit, and then you're met with Doolittle's raid of Alec Baldwin playing Doolittle, which is just mind-blowingly bad. And there's just so much historically wrong. We really need to move on because we spent all day on that. If I don't know, it's not a real big movie internationally, but if you ever heard of Team America World Police, just look up the soundtrack called Pearl Harbor Sucks Just As Much As I Love You. Anyway, so the second one that I remember seeing in my youth was Wind Talkers with Nicolas Cage.
Horrible movie.
God.
It would have been a lot better if it wasn't for Nick Cage. But let's be fair. We should make him use his real name. We should make him use his real name, which is Nicholas Coppola. He's Francis Ford Coppola's cousin. Or nephew, I think, or something like that. And he refuses to use his real name because he doesn't want to share the spotlight with his relative.
I dug through the cast of it because it's been a while since I've seen it, and actually Mark Ruffalo was in it, who plays the Hulk, which he's not an awful actor, but I guess he had to pay the bills. And the second, Christian Slater played like I guess if you want to play somebody who's been ran over by life, Christian Slater is the character you want.
Because he has been run over by life.
But that's just a horrible cast. Nick Cage and Christian Slater. Let's never put those two together again. And then I know I'm going to say this name and it's going to get a response. Red Tails.
Oh, God. Thinking German destroyers with 50 caliber machine guns. Yes, please.
George Lucas just fully checked out on this project.
Was he part of that?
Yeah, that was LucasArts really? Studios. He was
really.
Yeah, that was all. That was his company who made this, and he was golfing.
It was very disturbing for me because I wasn't ready to see Walter White as a bigot.
Yeah, I didn't buy that. Well, let's real quickly.
Yeah.
Just for okay, I know there's a lot of people from Germany, Russia, other countries that listen to this podcast. we as Americans don't believe any of the shit that happened in Red Tails. Please don't think that, in America we're all in their fucking movie theaters yelling, fuck yeah, with our popcorn in one hand.
Totally true.
The movie was made for $58 million. It only made $49 million. So it lost money. It lost almost $9 million. It wasn't like this thing was celebrated over here. And there's one thing I want to say. For some reason, Cuba Gooding Jr. is the go-to black guy for every World War II movie. Like, he was in Pearl Harbor. He was in that diving movie. He was put in Red Tails. And I don't think he actually does that great of a job, but he always was.
He's in the other Tuskegee movie as well, that one that HBO made a few years ago with Lawrence Fishburne, called Tuskegee, I think is what it was called.
And he wins medals every time he steps on the movie theater, or the stage for these movies. He earns another medal for his cabinet. And I find that baffling. Terrence Howard is in it, which he's an okay actor, but then it gets really weird because they filled the rest of the flight staff up with people like Method Man. Because whatever.
Because they didn't have a choice. Because Common was too busy.
So
Bohannon.
I know. Anyway, nobody gets that reference, Kobe.
I know.
So there's a lot of historical inaccuracies real quick about Red Tails that, in case anybody wants to know. In the movie they're on P-40s and then they go straight to P-51Ds. To my knowledge, they went from P-39s to P-51Bs and Cs. Wasn't there something else in between before they got the D variants? P-47s, I think, and maybe.
I don't think they flew 47s. I think they flew. I don't think they were in P-39s. They had P-40s, B and C 51s, and then they went to D 51s.
I think they were deployed with B and C P-51s. Is that right? And
yeah,
P-40,
I don't know.
They trained state.
Yeah, P-40 was stateside.
They didn't go to Europe with these outdated worn down P-40s like the movie tries to portray. These guys were actually one of them. They were well funded. They were well trained. The movie tries to make them like the hardships of the black pilot. These guys were given every opportunity.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, there was no difference between them and the average line pilot. All of them had college degrees, which is pretty rare for back then. They weren't a bunch of stupid dummies. They were treated much better than what the movie made them out to be.
And then there's a couple of mediocre ones I won't mention too much. And then I don't know. Yeah, I guess we'll move on from that. There's a couple others, but I guess we'll call them mediocre. I won't want to bash too much. But the Tom Cruise movie was the last one I saw that I just said that shit awful.
What was that?
Was it Valkyrie?
Oh, Valkyrie. Yeah, it was all right.
I hated that movie.
No, it wasn't.
I hated that movie.
I didn't mind it, really. It was too full of famous people.
Really? I thought there was two people I recognized.
Kenneth Branagh was in it. Eddie Izzard was in it.
Eddie Izzard? What the fuck was the transvestite comedian doing in that movie?
No, he actually played some German general, and he was actually really good at it.
Well, yeah, he's brilliant. But anyway, that just kind of blows my mind right there. Thank you. All right, so let's start with our top World War II movies. It's going to be a top 10, but it actually turned in like top 14 or 15-ish. It kind of starts out in order, and then it's really hard to put a lot of these movies in perspective. Some of these we're going to call like either, these movies are all great for a different reason. And the first one we'll start with, and I'll let these guys talk about more than I can, Das Boot. It's probably the number one reviewed.
Well, it's not even a movie. It's a miniseries, is it not? I think it was a miniseries.
It's a miniseries that aired, made by Wolfgang Petersen in Germany, that aired, was it like 10, 12 episodes, I think?
And several hours
basically
long.
The whole cut. I mean, everything they filmed on set is in that miniseries. The film that you saw at the movies in the cinemas is actually, you could actually go and see the basic, I think, 2-hour version, which was the basic, mostly, with most of the stuff cut out of it, except for the meatiest parts. And then you have the director's cut, which is actually my personal favorite, which is almost 4 hours long. And with original German voices, it's an amazing film. Absolutely amazing. One of my definite favorites, not just as a war film, but as a film in general.
It's almost 100% German acting, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
It is entirely German acting, actually. All the main cast actors are German, and but the thing is that on set, although they actually spoke German, the thing was that they were supposed to dub the film after they actually filmed it, including the German version as well. So sometimes you'll notice that the voices don't exactly cover perfectly what you're seeing on the screen. And that is because, despite the fact that they were actually speaking German on set, their voices weren't being recorded, and they were only given a chance to use that and to give themselves German voices by dubbing. And that's why you had a version where they all spoke English, and that's why you had a version where they all spoke German. And for obvious reasons, the second one is actually the one to watch.
Now, you've seen it, Kobe. Where did you actually see it? Was it released in theaters in the States ever? Or?
I don't remember if it was released in theaters. It's been on TCM, runs it a couple times a year. They typically do the German version with subtitles, but I've also seen the English dubbed version as well.
I think it was actually released in the US, although that was way back in the 1980s.
Like 1985, I think.
Not have seen it.
Yeah.
I wasn't, like, I was maybe 3 months old when it came out, so... forgive me. All right, and then the second one is actually a movie that I never really heard about until I started hanging out with you guys, called Downfall. And I looked it up, and this is kind of a bizarre movie. And I looked through it, and what it cost them. I have the number right here. It's kind of interesting. They made it for $13.5 million. It only made 1.2. So it was just kind of, I guess you would call it a flop, but it was a low budget thing anyway. Roger Ebert, before he died, gave it 5 stars and held the crap out of this movie about the most accurate portrayal of Hitler as a human being, and just as a human being, and just how it showed the Nazi Party, I guess, in its true colors.
That is very true. That is a very good assessment, actually. The thing about Downfall is it's half psychological movie or drama, and it's half about the harsh realities of late war Germany, and the downfall of not only Hitler himself but also of the German society. And to me, at least, this is one of the greatest psychological portraits in the whole of film history. I mean, I haven't seen any other film which portrayed a single character so accurately, and which gave such a vivid visual description of a given character. But the thing is that some of the film critics and historians who actually saw the movie actually went ahead and asked the question: okay, this is a brilliant movie. This is a absolutely brilliant performance by Bruno Ganz, who's an Austrian theater actor, and he doesn't usually star in movies, especially big ones. But this is a great performance. But are we, as the civilization that survived Hitler, allowed to portray him as a human being? Because let's face it, in that film, he is portrayed as 100% human being, and at some point, I at least actually started feeling sorry for him, despite knowing all the atrocities that he and his henchmen actually committed. So it's a bit of a troubling film, but it's one that I would definitely recommend to anyone. Anyone from Europe or from the United States who wants to know who Hitler actually was needs to see this film.
One thing that gets lost in war movies is war's a machine in the end, and sometimes you're just watching two machines fighting each other, and the human story gets lost in a lot of the old World War II produced movies. And that's one thing a lot of the newer ones are doing really well, is putting the human story first.
I haven't seen it. I want to see it. I've never had a chance to see it.
It's actually kind of hard to find in the States.
I actually I want to see it just because, I mean, even though you might not agree with it, I think both sides of the story need to be told. Only fair.
The U.S. side gets told way too much because we have Hollywood.
No, I wouldn't say the U.S. side. I'd say the Allied side.
Well, yeah, but we have the Hollywood machine who is making it for their demographic. Where was that movie made, actually? Or who produced it? Does anybody know?
I have no idea. It was a German movie, was it not? I have no idea. Maybe it was a British movie? I don't know. Firefly.
Yeah, you have IMDb.
I don't know.
Get on that, Kobe. Who produced that movie?
Called Downfall?
Downfall, yeah.
Therefore was actually produced by Constantin Films in Berlin.
Okay.
I think, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah,
Sorry, I completely lost
it. The director's German.
Okay.
Yeah, Wolfgang Hirschbiegel actually directed it, but the thing is that Constantin Films are actually known for releasing a lot of good stuff, and in addition to the Untergang, or the Downfall, they actually also released The White Ribbon, about the First World War. Excellent film as well. Goodbye Lenin, which might be a film that some of you might recognize and know, at least from some film festivals in the US. And the RAF, not to be confused with the Royal Air Force, the Red Army faction, or the Baden-Meinhof complex, as it was known.
I saw that movie. That was actually a really good movie.
It was beautiful.
That was a very good movie.
Really good picture, both politically speaking, socially speaking, and culturally speaking, of 1960s and 70s Germany. I really like that movie, and I would like to see it again. So yeah, you have, drug-fueled communists driving around stolen Porsches and then shooting AKs into the air.
It was a great movie.
And then having moral dilemmas about being in prison and about the harsh punishment infringed on them by the German state. It really is a very good film. Well, Constantin Films is a very good company when it comes to such portrayals. And so far, every film I've seen from them has been very, very good. Really.
All right, so here's another movie you're gonna love, Firefly. Battle Britain is at what, 3 on this list? Yeah, 3. With Michael Caine.
Yeah. One of my personal favorites. I've seen it like 15 times already, and I can't have enough of it.
Air-to-air photography is the best part. The rest of the movie
I've read the acting is. I've read repeatedly from critics that the acting is just terrible.
It's terrible.
I think Roger Ebert said the dog, Michael Caine's dog, was the best acting in the movie. At one point, I think that was actually a quote he used.
Well, Laurence Olivier's part as Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, it wasn't that bad, but I mean, of course the acting was wooden, and of course the plot was just, confusing, and to someone who didn't know the actual story behind the Battle of Britain, it might be a bit overwhelming. But the aerial photography, as Kobe said, is just tremendous. It's
phenomenal.
I think it's actually the best one anyone has ever made for any World War II film with aircraft in it. And so much so that films like the 1990s Czech production Dark Blue World actually still used footage from that film as fillers for what they couldn't actually make. And, this was real air-to-air photography in an age where CGI didn't yet exist. And they actually had a film set up in Spain where they had all these Spanish-built Bf-109s with Merlin engines in them.
And the Heinkel 111s as well.
Yeah, Heinkel 111s as well, and all kinds of different aircraft. And they went to extreme lengths to ensure absolute authenticity. So, for example, when you see that scene with the Ju-87s dive bombing the Ventnor radar station, the thing is that they actually had to use scale models of these planes to accurately replicate the plane that wasn't available because there are not a single Ju-87 was available at the time as a flyable aircraft, and not until this day actually.
So watch Battle Britain for the airplanes.
Oh yes.
And then we're gonna go 4, which is one of my favorites, and I know Kobe's seen this a ton of times. Band of Brothers, and I guess Kobe, I don't know if the other two have read the book, but Kobe's biggest deal with Band of Brothers is it didn't completely match the book by Ambrose, right?
Yeah, actually, Stephen Ambrose, the guy that wrote the book Band of Brothers, and also was one of the executive producers and wrote a lot of the episodes. He is by far my favorite author of all time. The book was able to go into much more detail, especially after they got into Germany, as they were hanging out, down by Burgess Garden and stuff like that. That's really where the book shined, I think. It's I saw Band of Brothers before I read the book, and I'm actually glad I did instead of the opposite, because I probably would have been a little bit disappointed. But it was kind of cool, like reading the book afterwards and kind of like thinking back in my head, oh, I remember this part, I remember that part. One of the problems that I had with it is the guy that played Captain, what's his name, their first CO in
David
basic
Schilling
training.
from Friends.
Yeah, David Schwimmer. Yeah,
Schwimmer.
The guy, I forgot what his name is. Captain, whatever the fuck his name was.
Yeah.
The series made him out to be just a total douchebag, and when you read the book, that's absolutely not the truth at all. They had nothing but the utmost respect for that guy, and that was, I don't know, that just kind of pissed me off when I read that.
I also noticed that contrast because I actually saw the series before I actually read the book, but I've rewatched the series like 3 or 4 times already. Sometimes I just get to a point where I crack open a beer or two, and then have a full night of Band of Brothers. And despite these deficiencies that you mentioned, Kobe, I still find Band of Brothers to be an extremely well-made series.
Oh, I agree. I agree. Absolutely agree. It's one of the best World War II docudramas ever made.
By far. I can watch 12, 15 hours of it in 2 days. Just because it sucks you in.
Sit down and I can watch it nonstop.
It has one of the highest ratings on IMDb of all things ever made. I think it's like a 9.7 out of 10, and it's really hard to get over 7.0. And then like you're a really good movie if you're at 8, and you're a classic if you're at like 8.9. This fucking thing has a 9.7 out of 10, which means that's pretty impressive. And everything is such high quality, from the props to the equipment, to the CGI, to what else I'm trying to say. But the main thing that made that, I'm going to run through the cast. The main thing that made that movie for me was the cast. And they took a lot of time. I've actually watched a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. And they took most of those actors through, I believe it was like a 5 or 6 week boot camp and infantry training school, where they familiarized these guys nothing but with Garans and the 1919 and the Thompsons and so on. And had them work together as, squads and getting them used to military life. Living on the field and so on. So it's kind of that same thing they did for Saving Private Ryan, but much more extreme. And first off, the main guy who plays Captain Winters, Damian Lewis, I think is one of the greatest TV actors that the States ever has lately.
It's really underrated.
And if you got, like, anybody out there, if you want to watch a great show, in the States we have something called Hulu. I don't know if that's available internationally, but you can go on Hulu.com and you can watch the first 2 seasons of a show that was canceled called Life. That show is fucking epic, and it's him.
Yeah, it was. It was a really good show. Yeah.
So I just want to recommend that solely because if you like Captain Winters from Band of Brothers, watch him in this great TV show called Life. And then you have Ron Livingston from Office Space, which when I saw him in a war movie, I'm like, what the hell? But
Peter Gibbons.
he made that Captain Nixon character.
Yeah, he did.
But one more thing about Captain Winters, though, the guy who actually played him, believe it or not, he's actually
British. Yeah.
He's a British guy through and through, and the way that he interprets the American accent, in that I actually didn't know anything about him before I actually watched the series, and I was entirely 100% sure that he was 100% an American. And it was only later when I actually saw an interview with him, and I heard him speak like, "Oh yeah, that was a nice film. Yeah, it just beggars belief. I mean,
I didn't know he was British until the very last episode. He mentioned. Like as the last episode's ending, where what happened to everyone after the war, and the guy that played John Cooper.
That's Michael Kudlitz.
Michael Kudlitz, yeah. His character went on to be a construction guy, and he said the word contractor like a British person. I was like, he's got to be a Brit.
Michael Kudlitz is he's also on The Walking Dead for people who watch that. He's the army guy on that. But anyway,
don't waste your time. It's a shitty ass show.
It's the number 1 watched show in the world, Kobe. So please don't. Please shut the fuck up. I don't want to start a whole. I don't want to start a whole fight over that right now. Please. Please no. Just you had to. Anyway, but real quick about British actor Simon Pegg of all fucking people made a cameo in Band of Brothers where he's like, Captain Winters, mail's down by the truck over there. Like it was hilarious.
Yep.
Where there's Donnie Wahlberg is in it, which hilarious. So you had Devil Wahlberg in that movie. You had Neil McDonough who played another lieutenant in there, he plays a lot of bad guys in movies and a lot of TV shows, and I think he is a pretty epic actor.
Yep.
Agreed.
Who else is in that? Tom Hardy is in Band of Brothers as a minor character.
Yeah, but I think his last appearance is in episode 3, I believe.
Yeah, and then Dominic Cooper is another one who was an extra in that.
Great movie.
So
great actor.
They had actors from all over the place. And then the thing, like, I still can't believe they filmed like the Battle of the Bulge scenes in almost a aircraft hangar.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's all aircraft hangar. The entire
in an aircraft hangar.
Yeah, they made the entire woods inside of an aircraft hangar, and then they just blew up shit.
Holy crap!
It's amazing what Spielberg and Tom Hanks did with their team.
Well, it has to be said that the scenes feel just so realistic that you can't help but feel that you're actually there.
Yeah.
This is what makes a good movie for me, because you can have the best actors, you can have the best script, you can have the best directors, but it doesn't really matter as long as you don't really feel that you're actually there, that you're taking part in these events, or at least observing them from a third-person perspective. It's just, this is this level of intimacy, that they've gone to. I mean, the conversations that those soldiers had, like. Eugene, the platoon doctor,
yeah,
the medic, yeah. The conversation he had with Babe, about Babe actually getting scratched on a hand or something like that. Small details like these actually make movies for me, because they actually show that the director cares about, getting you to know with all the characters and all the people that are there.
The last thing I'll say real quick about Band of Brothers, and then we'll move on, is they had there's a small group of soldiers that they had that, I think it was the guy from New York, the little Italian guy. I can't remember his name. And a couple others always had that comedic, like they're always, the smartasses in the group, making jokes back and forth the entire series. And then that showed the 3 old guys, they flew over to Bastogne to see where the fight happened. And these 3 old 80-year-old men are walking through the woods. And he goes, man, he goes, I don't remember these woods being so beautiful. And the other one goes, yeah, because the trees aren't fucking exploding. Just and you can just tell they still have that like same chemistry, and it's just great to see that that series captured these people's real lives and personalities as best as they could, by doing the interviews with the old men who lived it.
Yeah, but that's the Band of Brothers. You really appreciate the level of detail they've gone into, and the fact that all these actors who played all these characters talked to the veterans who were there, or talked to the veterans that they were playing, actually. So, they were able to capture the personalities, the accents, and, the small details that actually make these characters lifelike.
Yeah. I think one thing that Tom Hanks, especially Tom Hanks, he was really big on this, and what Steven Spielberg did is they set out from the beginning to make it true and to make it a tribute to what these guys did, and I think that kind of forced the actors to go above and beyond what they would normally do to make sure that their roles were played right, and that it was not a disservice to the guys that actually were there. All
right, real quick note before we move on. Webster is another character that is in the show, and he's bigger towards the end. Yeah. He was a trained journalist or literature major. He wrote down a ton of events that he was present for, and then when he disappeared in 1960s in a sailing accident, his wife, before she passed away, after she passed away, gave the book to the World War II National Archives in LSU, where Stephen Ambrose was a professor. That's how he got a hold of it. He published it, and then that's what brought his interest into Band of Brothers, and that's how that whole thing got started. So if you want to read, if you've read Band of Brothers, you should probably also grab Webster's book that was published that he wrote from his, his recordings of what happened, too.
Yeah.
Anyway, so moving on, we have, and I threw this in here because I was kind of on the fence, but I know Kobe adores this movie. The remake of Inglourious Basterds, a Quentin Tarantino one.
Great movie. The great movie. It's not, it's kind of a war movie, but I mean, Hitler dies in a big theater fire. Right, okay, whatever.
They did not die.
It's just
they held an MP40 over his face for 35 minutes.
Yeah, but still, I mean, just the fact that they got Hitler in the theater and then burned the theater down. It's totally over the top.
Christopher Waltz, who actually played him, he played a tremendous role. I mean, it doesn't matter if Inglourious Basterds is a pastiche or not, but just the sheer acting skill that you see there is just beyond belief. And the best bit is that actually, remember that first scene when he was talking to the French guy in French, talking about milk and, questioning about the Jews that he was hiding in the cellar and so on and so forth. And then he started talking in Italian with the whole team, including Brad Pitt, who famously said, "Buongiorno," one of my favorite scenes from the whole film. He can actually speak fluent French and fluent Italian, so it's not a fluke. It's not learned by heart phonetically. He actually knows this stuff and knows both these languages and can speak in them fluently. So this is not a fluke. This is no performance. This is actual acting.
The part that always stuck out to me was the Hitler death and then the bear Jew scene.
Oh, the bear Jew.
when he comes out of the tunnel.
Baseball bat.
Yes.
Yeah, just. Hitting his baseball bat against the wall like boom, boom. It's like an ominous sound of a death drum or something like that.
Mm.
The Valkyrie is coming.
Up next, and this is where the list really gets messy for me because a lot of these are classics, and I don't know how to throw 4 or 5 of these up against each other, and I don't think it's fair. Because a lot of these will stand the test of time, and even though they come back a little bit cheesy and dated, things like A Bridge Too Far, especially when you look at Bridge Too Far, Sean Connery, Gene Hackman, Michael Caine, the action scenes didn't really hold up well to the test of time. 40 years almost now. We still have to respect that collection of old, classic actors, and and it's been a while since I've seen it. I don't know how you guys feel, how it rates over time.
I like the movie a lot. That's one of my favorite movies. I always enjoy it. I don't know. Has it held up over time? For the most part, I think.
The scene that finally got me was the final assault when there was like Germans and cars and the car would catch on fire and then you just see people jumping out of it on fire. It was just chaos. Like it was like, we're just gonna blow a bunch of shit up and you guys run around with fire suits on.
To me, The Bridge Too Far actually held up much better than films like Patton, because Patton didn't hold up at all. I mean, the whole film is, to me, incredibly cheesy. I mean, Patton. But A Bridge Too Far is actually, to me, one of those classics which I would be happy to watch again. It's not one of my, real favorites, like my top 5, but I still respect the film for what it achieved.
I couldn't get it out of the top 10. It was out of my top 10 for a while when I was making the list, and I was like, I could not justly say, this is like if I were telling people, hey, 20 World War II movies to watch, I'd have to throw that one in there.
Yeah, and justifiably so.
And another one which I actually watched because Kobe told me to, and it's The Longest Day, which turned out to be the longest freaking movie.
Yeah, it is a long movie.
Holy crap! All right, so Longest Day, watching it for the first time 3 weeks ago. Every fucking actor, his mother, his stepsister, everybody is in this fucking movie. I'm like, well, there's John Wayne, and there's so-and-so, and there's so-and-so. And then we still couldn't figure out who that pretty French woman was.
She's some famous French actress. She was kind of famous, I think, back when the movie was made, but that movie really kind of set her career going.
It's just insane. It's just, anyway, that's just mind-blowing. And then there's all these, but the thing is, the thing the movie had going for it was the scale. Back then, there was no CGI. There was no way to, like a lot of movies today, you have like 50 extras and then you multiply them 1,000 times, and then that's how you get your crowds.
Yep.
This movie, they literally hired like 60,000 people to go run down a beach, and that was how they filmed it, and it's impressive. And then the John Wayne part was like, okay, and then this part. But the movie, when you have, like, if you look at the cover of The Longest Day, there's literally like 30 actors' pictures on it. And it's really hard at a certain point to remember who's doing what. And then, it randomly cuts 45 minutes later back to the British guy on the bridge with his bagpipes guy playing next to him, and then you have the random the pastor, who of course is a famous actor, looking for his communion his communion set in the swamp. I'm like,
the water.
There was some stuff that really should have been cut to get the movie down to like it had some really great scenes, like the French woman when she's on the railroad tracks and the Germans. Like that was actually a really good scene, and then it was off played by the random scene of the guy laying there, like the ending. Like that was just random.
My favorite scene was when the French were attacking that port. And it was filmed from a helicopter. It was filmed in one take, no redos. They only had enough stuff to do it once, and it's just fantastic. It's one of the best pieces of film ever made. Period.
You ever seen it, Firefly?
Nope.
Really? Never seen Longest Day? It's a great movie. It's one of my favorite movies. Great book too. Cornelius Ryan wrote the book and also wrote the screenplay.
Okay.
They took a lot of artistic license with the movie. They combined a lot of characters.
It was all filmed on location too, right? Omaha Beach, and like it was all filmed on the right historical spots.
A lot of characters are composites of real people.
Now, one thing I do have
John Connery's first movie, I believe, actually.
One thing I do have to complain about that movie, though, is it seems like every German actor in there, whenever they're on the phone, they're screaming at each other at the top of their lungs. And then as soon as they hang up the phone, they're talking normal voices to the guy next to them, calm and smoothly. It's very bizarre. Like, every time the Germans are on the phone, they're screaming at the top of the lungs at each other.
Markham, don't they do it in real life?
So that's, I guess I'd recommend that one. Bridge on the River Kwai was something I saw when I was 16 first on DVD. And I really want to say it's not that great a movie, but it's something that always stuck with me.
Satisfactory. It's a good movie because Alec Guinness is
right.
Guinness is a freaking genius. William Holden is also in it. He does a really good job.
It's like there's nothing, like I rewatched it a couple weeks ago, and there's nothing spectacular about it, but it just sticks with you.
No, it's just the total brutality of that movie is just drives me insane. How the Japanese could just be so cruel, unbelievable.
But the movie's really good, really solid, right? Until it gets where he escapes the camp, goes to the fucking Sandals Resort for the Navy, sleeps with every nurse there, blah blah blah, and then he gets recruited to the British Commando Unit or whatever, where it's a whole school of British commandos, but then they jump back in to go blow up the bridge, this super important bridge. And it's 4 or 5 guys. 2 of them break their legs in trees. By the time they actually get to the bridge, it's 2 Native women, a guy with a half a leg, and the American that they didn't want to take. And so you have 2 Native girls throwing this is very bizarre, hand mortars, and a guy and a British guy with one leg on top of the cliff with a gin and tonic in one hand and a sting gun in the other. It was just, and everybody's dead except for the 2 Native girls and the one old British officer. And it's like, I guess we won. It's just a very odd ending. And that's what I think is why I want to dislike that movie, is because of the last 10 minutes. I just literally sit there and went, this is how this fucking ends? I don't know. So the next one on the list, and I put this on here not because I don't think it's the greatest movie ever made, but I really like Clint Eastwood a few years ago, or several years ago now, made 2 movies, Letters from Iwo Jima and Flags of Our Fathers. One was released as a standpoint from the American, the other point was from the standpoint of the Japanese. I watched the American, I believe the American one was released first in the States, and it did so-so in the theaters. And it didn't do anything special for me, but when I watched the Letters from Iwo Jima one, the Japanese side, it really did a great job of humanizing the the World War II movies do, especially the Hollywood ones, try to make the Japanese people come out to be absolute monsters and murderers, and sometimes that's justified. But it really showed. I think it was Olympic. Was there Olympian? I'm trying to remember. There's like Olympian horse rider or something that was an officer there who really didn't want to be there, but since it was his country's duty, he went there. He was wealthy, and it just kind of shows how not all the Japanese were there by choice; they were there by duty. And these guys are ready to give their life for the sacrifice. It was just a really well done, I think, or as well done Hollywood piece about, the Japanese army as it could have been.
Well, that's true. It does really humanize the Japanese a little bit, especially because the portrayal of the Japanese, particularly in American movies, has always been that of basically psychotic murderers devoted entirely to their state and to the emperor. But the thing is that while it might not be the best war movie ever made, the fact alone that it actually does that humanizing part so well makes it for me. So it actually explains, or actually makes an effort to explain, why the Japanese people behaved in such a way, and why they were so devoted, and why they were willing to give up their lives so easily and so readily for the emperor. So in that respect, it's actually very 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 good, and I would actually compare it to the Japanese film Yamato in that respect. But Japanese films are strange to many Westerners because they have this whole tradition of the kabuki theater in which every single action a character takes is emphasized to not even to 11, it's emphasized to 20.
Yeah.
So you have that feeling that they're not actually they're not actually acting as they should be, whereas in the Japanese canon they're doing everything by the book. So the presence of a film like Flags of Our Fathers and then Letters from Iwo Jima, which translates the Japanese mentality to a Western language, is especially important. And I really hope that there's going to be more films like this from the Japanese perspective that will illustrate why the Japanese did what they did.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend either of these movies alone, but together as a set, I think they're worth really watching.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And then I guess you ever seen them, Kobe? Kind of quiet on that one.
I saw Flags of Our Fathers. The other one I tried to watch, but I couldn't watch it. And I don't know why. There's something happened.
There's a lot of things you can't watch. You give up in 10 minutes on. So
yeah.
Last one, I don't know. This isn't my favorite all times, but my God, is it really rated on MBD, and it was a blockbuster, and it did really well, and I guess it had its reasons. Was Saving Private Ryan, and the Saving Private Ryan was based too much on fiction for me, but yeah. Tom Hanks did a really solid job of acting in that movie, and there was a lot of other good supporting actors, and then it was Spielberg, so it was shot well. But there's some really bad military history to that, even from the U.S. The U.S. would have never sent a team to grab one brother like that. They would have put out the order that, hey, you can, they would send him leave orders, but they wouldn't put together a special team to go find him like that.
Yeah, agreed. And we also have to remember that in addition to Tom Hanks' very good performance, there are some truly horrendous ones, like, there's no other way of putting it, Vin Diesel.
Yeah, horrible. But then, like I said, Nathan Fillion is in there, which, if anybody likes Firefly or Castle, anyway, sorry. Who else is in that? There's some other weird, I have the list here. Ted Danson, of all people, is fucking in that movie. From Cheers.
Giovanni Ribisi, the guy that played the medic, did a really good job, I thought.
Adam Goldberg, that's one of my other, he's like a B-list actor, or maybe slight A.
What's the other guy? The other guy from New York, Ed something or other, the guy that had the BAR.
Oh, I can't remember his name.
He was in it.
Tom Sizemore was in it, which I'm not a huge Tom Sizemore fan, but who else was in there? Adam Goldberg. I guess that's about it, isn't it? There's some others. Matt Damon, of course, was in there, which at that time he was just exploding. So
Yeah, he might have been exploding back then, but that wasn't a good performance.
He is either Matt Damon is either award-winning or just shit. There's like no mediocre with that guy.
Yep.
Jason Bourne. It's just the way it is.
There's some others.
It's his best acting ever.
Messing up my list here. There's a couple that Kobe wanted me to add, so you get to talk about them. Battleground. Go ahead and explain.
Battleground. 1948, I think in 1948, 1947
I've never actually seen that one.
Came out about the Battle of Bulge. It is probably the most realistic war movie ever made, period. Seriously.
There's the Kobe review.
Fantastic.
And then you had Winds of War.
Winds of War was a miniseries along with War and Remembrance. They're both books by Homer and Wolk. Very, very, very good. They're made in the early to mid 80s. Very, very, very good. I like War War and Remembrance better than The Winds of War, but other people don't agree with me. Take the time to watch it. Really good.
And then we need to throw in The Great Escape with Steve McQueen somewhere on that list to,
Yeah, it was a good movie. Great movie.
Well, it's a good action movie, and it's actually.
Is it a war movie? Probably.
It's got Steve fucking McQueen in it, so.
Yeah, well, it's Steve McQueen, who's escaping on a Triumph motorcycle posing as a BMW. Okay. But...
Yeah, and then they fly to the airfield, or they go to the airfield, and they get into a German airplane that's actually a T-6 with a freaking swastika on the side of it, but I digress.
Yeah, but, every movie made in that period actually had that limitation simply because they had no access to, such military hardware. But the thing is that, to me, as an action film with Steve McQueen in it, it's actually quite good. I mean, if you want to see Steve McQueen at his finest, you need to see the car chase scene from Bullet.
Of course.
And nothing else, because the rest of the film is complete and utter garbage, with the exception of the soundtrack, which is actually quite nice. But then again, you have him in The Great Escape, and that's actually a pretty solid performance from him. Some people idolize him for that performance. I don't know why. I'm not one of them. But, as an action film with a World War II theme, and not strictly speaking as a World War II film, I would actually recommend it.
Alright, so let's throw this up. I got Kobe. Do you have any other Kobe that you want to tie in before this?
Destination Tokyo, a great submarine movie with Cary Grant. About going into Tokyo Bay to sink something. It's a really, really, really good movie. They actually filmed in a real submarine.
Firefly, Markin, you got any others you want to tag onto this real quick?
Markin, you have anything? No. He says no. Do I have anything? Well, not really. I think we filled out the list quite nicely.
All right, I have one of my personal top 10s, which I will admit it shouldn't be a top 10, but and you mentioned it earlier, so I'm gonna somewhat defend it, but then I will crush it too. You mentioned the Patton movie, how it just aged horribly, and I'm gonna talk about it for a minute. Patton is one of my personal favorite World War II figures because I find the man's history, like every time you study Patton, something else. You learn something else because the man had such a weird-ass life. The egotistic motherfucker that he was came up with inventions, uniforms, tank tactics, political... I mean, the guy's reach was just everywhere, and you look at his family history, it's just... he's just a weird American icon.
Yeah.
So, when they made the movie Patton... the only reason that the movie Patton is good in my mind is because of George S. Scott, the actor who played him.
Yeah, that's true, and the opening scene was very good too, but that actually attracted me to the film at first, because I knew it was an award-winning movie, I knew it was a great performance by the lead actor, but to be honest, there was nothing else that actually drew me to it.
I'll go through it. I'll go through all the problems of it real quick. So, yes, George S. Scott, it's worth watching it just for him. There's many problems with it, including the good news is they shot the movie for some reason in 1960 widescreen. So if you watch it on a DVD today, it actually does fit the TV correctly, whereas some of the older movies of that time kind of get messed up with the aspect ratio.
Yeah.
So that they did that correct. Two, the big problem with that movie when you watch it, and if you watch it right now, you'll notice the stuff. They didn't have access to any of the correct equipment, and that's one of the things when you're watching this, you're like, holy crap. They have a Cessna.
Yeah, you have M47s being
yes,
Tigers.
you have a Cessna that they painted a swastika on.
Yep.
You have Korean War surplus artillery. You have was it M48s versus what was the other one?
M47s.
Or M47s versus another post-war tank. All the
I think it was a Chaffee.
Okay, Chaffee, yes, that's correct. M20, and then you had all of the vehicles that were in that, besides the Jeeps, were 1950 service French vehicles in the desert.
Yep.
And so there was a lot of, like, if you get nitpicky on the sets, the movie just looks off. But like I said, it's really George S. Scott, I think, just did a great job of.
George C.
Scott.
Is it
George C. Scott did a great job of embodying Patton's ego.
The personality.
Yeah, the personality.
Well, far as the equipment goes, remember you have to remember this movie was made in Spain with the full backing of the Spanish military, so they're gonna they're gonna use what they have. There's a scene where there's a Heinkel 111 that flies over. That was the last Heinkel 111 in service in the Spanish military.
And there's a lot of technical data that's off, but for me, it's just like I said, as it's the best probably piece of film you're gonna get actually about him. And it's kind of a shame because I don't know, there's too much politically wise. He's too much of a. If today they tried to make a movie about Patton, it'd blow up just because of the way the guy acted.
Well, you couldn't make a movie like that today because it would have to be PG-13 to have any success in the box office, and Patton was not someone who was PG-13 by any means.
So that's why that movie's personally in my top 10. I'm not saying it should be in a top 10 list. It's just me personally. That movie always, I will always sit down and watch that movie.
Well, if you look at all the lists that people have been compiling of the greatest World War II movies of all time, Patton always somehow gets into those lists. So, your point is not unjustified. It's just that, in today's day and age, I just don't think that Patton is the film that you want to watch, unless you want to focus on the character development and the character itself.
Now, real quickly, I wanted to mention this movie real quick. The most baffling fucking thing in the world is that every time Russia is a huge part of World War II, and Hollywood won't go near it, and they did once. We'll get to that in a minute. And then there was actually a movie called Stalingrad, which I've never seen. Either of you three seen it?
No.
It's utter
Yeah, I've heard
garbage.
it's horrible.
Don't ever watch it. It's the single most unrealistic, cheesily acted, over CGI'd World War II film I've ever seen. This is a World War II epic themed epic, which is clearly cut for Putin's Russia. This is not about the realistic portrayal of Stalingrad as we know it from history books.
I've just seen clips of like T-34s just running wild and loose through the forest, but
well, yeah.
And the other one we'll talk about, which was a big kind of like another blockbuster attempt, was Enemy at the Gates, which
oh my god.
Which some people liked, and it was an okay action movie, but from a history standpoint, holy fuck.
It's a massive clusterfuck. The only good thing about this movie was Rachel Weisz. Honestly.
Yeah, was Ed Harris, Rachel Weisz, Jude Law.
I thought the kid that was in it did a pretty good job too. I don't even know what the hell his name is, and the guy that played Khrushchev, what's his name? Bob Hoskins. I thought he did a really good job too.
Yeah, but he always seems to play some kind of disfigured character,
yeah.
And that will actually fit him nicely.
So I just don't know. I don't think a good World War II Russian themed movies are going to happen.
I doubt it.
Well, the only good ones that actually came out are actually Russian. But for that, we would have to make a separate podcast because there are plenty of really, really, really good Russian films about the Second World War, but that's a completely different story. I mean, that would fill an entire book, not even just an hour-long podcast.
All right, so I think that wraps it up for us.
Yep.
All right. Any last words, Kobe, Firefly?
I don't have any. Go watch the movies. If you can, watch Battleground. It's a great movie. Sit down, spend time with Das Boot if you haven't seen it. It's worth the time.
Yeah, and you
Band
have
of Brothers
to watch
as well.
Director's Cut. Director's Cut is the one to watch, definitely. I mean, with the original soundtrack by Klaus Doldinger, it's a claustrophobic, incredibly tense, very psychologically demanding film that leaves you wet and just desperate because you attach yourself to those characters so much, and it's just wow! It's just the greatest World War II film for me ever made. You have to watch it. And also, when we're talking about German film directors, Der Untergang, The Downfall, must watch too.
I haven't seen it. I need to watch it. It's really hard to get here in the States. I don't know where to find it.
Yeah, you can. I think you should try to look for a DVD on Amazon.
And then real quickly, I said in the beginning, we're not taking any away from the Schindler's List and the Pianist. Those are movies that you should watch. Just be a decent human being. Firefly, you're actually from Warsaw. How big of a deal are those movies for the Polish community?
They were a big deal, I have to say. Especially The Pianist. I mean, The Schindler's List is also considered to be one of the greatest portrayals of occupied Poland during the Second World War, but to me, The Pianist really rings true, especially because of the troubled relationship between the Polish and Jewish population immediately before the Second World War. Despite living alongside each other happily and peacefully for centuries, there was actually some tension going on there, and the film actually portrayed that really nicely. And Adrian Brody played a perfect role. I have to say, it's absolutely perfect. And every time I watch this film, I'm literally in tears. I mean, this is a movie which does so much for my emotions that I just cannot recommend it enough. The Pianist definitely, and also one film by a Polish film director, Agnieszka Holland, Europa Europa, which is
I've
film...
seen that. But yeah, with the Jewish kid that hides in the German army.
Yeah, well, it's the Jewish kid who's taken into the German army, then to SS barracks to be trained and to be the perfect Aryan, and then is captured by the Russians, and then is captured by the Germans again, or something like that.
Yep, it's a great movie. The guy that played that kid just did a phenomenal job.
Absolutely phenomenal too. Yep. But the best bit is that I actually met the real life character on whom the film character was based. And I actually had an opportunity to talk to him and to listen to his speech about his experiences and the similarities between the film and his own experiences. And that was one of the most important events of my life. I actually met him in Tel Aviv when I went there with a trip, and he's an incredible person. Absolutely incredible person. The film is a must-watch, from a psychological standpoint, as a drama, not as strictly speaking a war film. This is also a must-watch for me.
Movie. It really is a good movie. I saw that movie when I was in high school in German class. Yep. It was required viewing.
I didn't get to see any of that stuff. Real quick, my my history teacher I had in high school, who was World War II, was like, if we teach war, we're glorifying it. So we went straight from like 1913 to 1946.
That's a whole other podcast.
I know. Anyway, that's just
Yeah.
All right. So, like I said, if you haven't seen the movies we listed, we encourage you all to, take a minute and watch some of these great movies, and we will catch you next week for another episode. Thanks for listening.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.